All right, now in section 3 here, we're going to be talking about solving systems of equations using another method. It's called elimination. But let's go back and talk about what happens when we solve any system of equations. Well, the first thing that could happen is what? Well, the two lines could intersect. And when they intersect, what will you get? Right, you're going to get the point, x and y, right? And then the second thing that could happen is that the two lines could end up being parallel. Now, if that's the case, there's no solution because the two lines don't intersect at all. And then the third option could be the fact that they end up being the same line. And when they're the same line, they have infinitely many solutions. All the points are in common. So keep that in mind as we go through these. Now, to use elimination, here's what we're going to do. We will always add the two equations together. And we're going to do that so that one variable gets eliminated. And that's how we get the term solving by elimination. So here's what's going to happen. Number one, let's add these two equations together and see what happens. When we add the two equations together, I'm going to be combining like terms. So x plus x, I get 2x. I add these like terms, y and negative y. Look what happens. They cancel out. They're eliminated. Let's add the negative 4 and the 2. What do you get? Negative 2. Here it's just a matter of dividing both sides by 2, and x is equal to negative 1. So we're done here, right? No, because remember, we're finding the what? The point of intersection. So we have to plug negative 1 in back up here into x. I usually just take the first equation. And I'm going to put the negative 1 in for x, plus y is equal to negative 4. To solve for y, I'm going to add 1 to both sides to get y is equal to negative 3. So my point of intersection is negative 1, negative 3. Look what happens when I add the two equations in number 2. When I add the x's, I get x plus 3x is 4x. Look what happens with the y's. They're going to cancel, equals 7 and 9 are 16. Dividing both sides by 4, I get x is equal to 4. We're not done though, right? Because I need to put this 4. Now I could put it into the first equation or I could put it into the second equation. Whatever looks like it might be easier, the shortcut, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm going to put it into the first. So if I put the 4 in for the x, I'm going to have 4 minus 3y is equal to 7. Now, because that's a positive 4, I need to subtract 4y from both sides. Negative 3, I believe I misspoke there. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I get negative 3y is equal to 3. Dividing both sides by negative 3, I get negative 1. So my point of intersection is 4, negative 1. In number 3, now in the first two examples, what happened? Well, the y's canceled out first. Look, in number 1, I had plus y and minus y. They canceled out. In number 2, I had minus 3y and plus 3y. They're going to cancel out. What's going to cancel out in number 3? That's right, the x's are. Look, negative 3x and positive 3x. They're going to cancel. Now I'm going to add the y's together. Negative 4y plus negative 1y, negative 5y. Equals negative 1 plus negative 4 is negative 5. Solving for y, I get y is equal to positive 1. Well, let's put that into, it looks like it might be easier if we use the second equation. It really doesn't matter. 3x minus 1 is equal to negative 4. When I add 1 to both sides, I get 3x is equal to negative 3. X equals negative 1. So we get the point negative 1, 1. Now, number 4 is a little bit trickier because when I add the two equations, and remember, this is We are always going to be adding the two equations. Is that the only way to do these? No, but it's the way that we're going to be doing these, and we're always going to be adding the two equations. But look what happens, and don't write this down, because when I add these two equations together, I get 2x plus 5x is 7x, and negative 3y plus negative 3y is negative 6y, and that didn't cancel anything out, did it? So we're going to have to change something. And I'll usually look at the bottom row, and that's just because that's the way I've always done this. So I'm looking at the bottom row. If that were a positive 3, they could cancel. But I changed the sign, didn't I? Well, if I change one sign in an equation, guess what we have to do? Change them all. So we have to go through and take the entire row and change all the signs. It was a positive 5x, now it's a negative 5x. It was a positive 14, that makes it a negative 14. Now when I add, the y's will cancel. I get 2x and negative 5x is negative 3x equals 11 plus negative 14 is negative 3x equals 1. Let's put that into the top equation. 2 times 1 minus 3y equals 11. 2 minus 3y equals 11. Subtract 2 from both sides. Negative 3y is equal to 9. Y equals negative 3. Are we done? No. Make sure you write down the point 1, negative 3. In number 5, what's going to cancel, the x's or the y's? Well, the x's are, but what do we have to do first? Change the signs in the bottom row, the entire row. That makes it a negative 6x, a positive 7y, and a positive 20. Because now I have positive 6x and negative 6x, which will cancel each other out. But that makes it 5y plus 7y is 12y. 4 plus 20 is 24. Y equals 2. If y is equal to 2, I'm going to take the first equation and put that 2 in for the y. 6x plus 5 times 2 is equal to 4. 6x plus 10 equals 4. Subtracting 10 from both sides, 6x is equal to negative 6. X equals negative 1. So we get the point negative 1, positive 2. Now keep in mind, I am going a little bit fast here. You can pause it at any time, or you can even back up and play it again, whatever. Just make sure you're keeping up. Notice in number 6 that the x's will end up canceling when I add them together. If this x is negative, I could do it in the top row. I'm not going to. So I've never done it that way. I never will do it that way. I will always change the ones in the bottom row. That's just the way I do it. It'll be a negative y, and it'll be a negative 3. And now my x's are going to end up canceling. Negative 2y plus negative 1y is negative 3y. 6 plus negative 3 is positive 3. Y equals negative 1. Now I'm going to put this back into the top equation. But we have to be careful about all of our signs. We've got minuses, negatives, subtract, add, multiply, divide, positive and negatives. Make sure you write it down correctly. The y is negative 1. Now, this says negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. Equals 6. Subtracting 2 from both sides, I get 4. So my point of intersection is 4, negative 1. And what that means is if we were to graph these two lines, they would intersect at 4, negative 1. Page 2. Now keep in mind that we're going to be, in solving story problems, we're going to define two variables. That is so important in solving story problems. We're going to set up a system of equations, which means you're going to write two equations. So we're going to solve that system. Always go back and make sure you're answering the question. Now, to define two variables. That means choose two variables and tell me what they stand for. Well, what are our unknowns in number one? Well, we're just talking about two numbers. So if I'm talking about two numbers, well, let's have x be one number and y be the other number. Because that's really all it's saying about our numbers, is that we have two different numbers. We'll get into more specifics later. We'll talk about that later. Suffice it to say that right now, x is going to be one of the numbers, y is the other number. So now, also keep this in mind. Each sentence will give you an equation. Where do you find the verb? Where is the verb? Well, in this sentence right here, is the verb. Why is that important? Because that's the equal sign. So the sum of two numbers is equals 66. How would you write the sum of these two things? Well, you'd add them together, right? So x plus y must be equal to 66. Then it turns around and says that the difference of the same two numbers, what does difference mean? It means subtract, right? The difference of the same two numbers, oh, there's that word is again, is equals 18. Something's going to be equal to 18. Well, what? Well, how about the difference of the same two numbers, x minus y? Solving this system of equations, the y's are going to cancel out. You get x plus x is 2x equals 66 and 18 or 84. X is equal to 42. Well, if x is equal to 42, what's y? Well, we put 42 back in for x. 42 plus y is equal to 66. Subtracting the 42 from both sides, y is equal to what? 24. So always check your answer to make sure that it works out. Do these two add up to 66? Yes, they do. Is the difference between the two 18? Yes, it is. 42 minus 24 is 18, so it works out. The sum of two numbers is 24. 5 times the first number minus the second is 12. Find the two numbers. Well, again, all it's saying is find two numbers. So let x equal the first number, or one number, whatever you want to call it. Let y equal the second. Now, the sum of two numbers is 24. Here's one sentence. That's going to give you an equation. Where's the equal sign? Is. So the sum of two numbers is 24. X plus y equals 24. But let's take this second sentence and let's see what it says. 5 times the first minus the second is 12. There's an equation in there, and we need to translate this so that we get an equation. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find the equal sign. What word will give you the equal sign? Right there it is. The is, right? So something is 12. Something equals 12. But it's not just x minus y this time. We have to take this phrase and translate it. Well, I have 5 times the first number. What's the first number? What are we calling that? We need math stuff for this. Well, our first number is x. Well, how would I write 5 times that? Well, how about 5x? Then it says minus, I guess we're going to use a minus sign then, and the second number, we're calling the second number y. So I have 5x minus y is equal to 12. And there's our system of equations. You know how to solve this now by using elimination because the y's are going to end up canceling. And we get 6x is equal to 36. X equals 6. Are we done? No, because it says to do what? It said to find the two numbers. So I need to find out what y is going to end up being. So I take my 6, put it in for the x, plus y is equal to 24. I think you see where we're going with this, right? Y ends up being 18. So that's the answer to our question. X is equal to 6 and y is equal to 18. Now, do they add up to 24? Yes, they do. Is 5 times the first, what's 5 times 6? 30. Minus the second, what's the second? 18. What's 30 minus 18? Ha! 12. There it checks out. Let's look at number 3. There are two numbers. 4 times the first decreased by 3 times the second is 12. 2 times the first increased by 3 times the second is 6. Find those two numbers. Well, pick two variables. Tell me what you're going to define them as, meaning this. Tell me what they stand for. Well, let x equal the first number, and how about y being the second? Now, 4 times the first number decreased by 3 times the second number is 12. That's a sentence. It's going to give us an equation. Where's the equal sign? Is. So something is 12. But what? Well, how would you write 4 times the first number? Well, I don't know. What are we calling the first number? Well, in this case, it's x. How would you write that? How about 4x? Then it says decreased by, so that's going to be a minus sign. And how would you write 3 times the second number? How about 3y? Then we're going to take the other sentence. 2 times the first number increased by 3 times the second is 6. Equal sign is. So something is equals 6. Let's translate. 2 times the first number, or what are we calling the first number? X. 2 times that would be 2x. Increased by, that's a plus sign. 3 times the second would be 3y equals 6. What are we going to do with these two equations? Add them together. What's going to cancel? The y's are. So the y's are going to cancel. We have 4x plus 2x is 6x equals 12 plus 6 is 18. X equals 3. We'll put that 3 again. Does not matter which equation. I'm going to use the second equation. The only reason why is I don't have to deal with the minus sign then. So I'm going to take 2 times 3 plus 3y equals 6 and solve this equation. 6 plus 3y equals 6. Subtracting 6 from both sides. Oh, wait a minute. What's happening here? Something weird. Not really. 3y, does that mean I don't get anything for y? What's going on here? Do the math. What's 6 minus 6? 0. What do you do to both sides? If you had 3y is equal to 18, what would you do to both sides? You divide by 3, right? You're still going to do that. You still need to get the y by itself. Y ends up being equal to 0. So our two numbers, 3 and 0. Check it to make sure. What's 4 times the first number? 4 times 3 is 12. Decreased by 3 times the second number. Well, that's going to be 0 is 12. That checked out. 2 times the first number, 3. Increased by 3 times the second, 0 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. Checked out. So always go back and check your work to make sure it does work out. Checking your work and of course, making sure you answer the question. If you have any other questions on this, see me in class and we'll go from there. But in the meantime, good luck with your assignment and we'll talk to you then. Bye.